Hey guys, Trip here. As the guy who made that Cyberpunk video that kept popping up in your feed a couple years ago, I feel like it only makes sense to tell you my thoughts on the game now that it's out. And boy, do I have a lot of thoughts about Cyberpunk 2077. So I was originally going to call this video something like Cyberpunk is everything wrong with open world RPGs. I planned on reviewing the game and using that as a jumping off point to discuss the lack of innovation we've seen in the genre over the past decade. But then Sony happened. Yeah, it's a bit hard to review a game when it's not even playable on your hardware. But as I sat there staring at my screen, wondering how I'm supposed to review a game I can't even play, it dawned on me. The issues with Cyberpunk go beyond the game itself. If we got to the point where the most anticipated game of the decade is being pulled from Sony's storefront after they had already certified it, then clearly there's a bigger issue. So instead of simply bashing the game itself, I want to address the elk in the room. How did this game make its money back before it even released? Why is it sitting on an 86% on Metacritic? See, I don't think many players realize just how easily video game companies exploit the system through marketing, tribalism, and clever gameplay tricks. People are acting like this Cyberpunk fiasco is a new thing. In reality, the industry has been driving toward this cliff for over a decade, overpromising and underdelivering, content in the knowledge that both their marketing teams and their diehard fans will shape the narrative in their favor. Guys, this game isn't the disease. It's a symptom. Cyberpunk is like a microcosm of everything wrong with the games industry, and I want to demonstrate how. In part, this video is an apology. Whether I meant to or not, I contributed to the hype machine that got us into this mess. I want to do my part to ensure this never happens again. So grab your popcorn, your pitchforks, and get comfortable, because this video is gonna be a weird one. Let's take a look. If you're someone like me who grew up playing open world RPGs, then I bet a lot of this feels like deja vu. In fact, it's pretty much routine at this point. A new game gets hyped up for years, releases to rave reviews only for it to be a shallow, buggy mess. It's a bit depressing, but hype and disappointment are so common in this genre that you just stop getting mad after a while. So what makes Cyberpunk different? Well, put simply, it's just a matter of scale. The marketing behind this game was astounding. No matter what kind of gamer you were, you couldn't escape Cyberpunk. The marketing was so effective, in fact, that it attracted millions of players who were new to open-world RPGs and weren't familiar with the spotty history of the genre. I mean, for real, if you had told me that the entire world was waiting with bated breath for an RPG, I never would have believed you. But for the first time since Skyrim, the average gamer was looking forward to a role-playing game where they can go where they want, do what they want, and be who they want. Now, if that's not the game Cyberpunk was trying to be, then why was it marketed that way? Seriously, go back to those old trailers and watch them again. There's not a ton of story or combat being shown off, is there? Instead, Night City was the star. Hell, it was the game's main feature. For the first time in years, an open world game was actually investing in its open world, and people really latched onto that. Gamers who were tired of linear shooting galleries or shallow death matches all seemed to unite around the idea of Night City. Nearly every trailer implies that Night City is this living, breathing world like nothing we've ever seen before. More importantly, we were told that our player would be an active participant in the world. Night City wasn't just a pretty backdrop, you see. It was a role player's paradise, filled with interesting things to see and do, choices that affect your reputation, your lifestyle, and the fate of the city itself. Or so we believed. Marketing is a powerful force. So is credibility. If you have both on your side, you can sway public opinion however you want. Sure, we may be used to disappointment, but this was CD Projekt Red. Even if the game doesn't live up to all the hype, it's gotta be good. Right? But we didn't get the game that was marketed to us. We got Cyberpunk. A game so obviously broken, so obviously unfinished, whose world is so obviously shallow that even the almighty force of marketing couldn't contain the backlash, and any goodwill CDPR had was quickly burned away. Like I said, Cyberpunk wasn't the first game to disappoint us like this. In fact, the industry does this all the time. But rarely do we see a game that so brazenly indulges in the worst of this industry. Misleading advertisements, fueling an impossible hype train, abusive work conditions, and all for a game that's mediocre at best. And that's ignoring how broken the game is in its current state. Like I said before, it's just a matter of scale. This is the same story we've witnessed throughout our gaming lives, multiplied by 1,000. So this leaves us with a difficult question. Why did the game review so highly? Well, it's actually pretty simple. Consumers aren't the only ones affected by hype. A lot of people claim these critics are paid off somehow, and I can assure you that's almost never the case. Think about it. Why would a game company need to pay off critics when they can just manipulate them? See, these issues are systemic, and game publishers have learned how to exploit the review system. This is what it all comes back to, a broken industry that survives by exploiting its own broken system. Let's break it down. These hype trains usually begin when a publisher starts drowning the media with a deluge of press releases, sneak peeks, and interviews. Conversely, they may release a mysterious trailer with a ton of money behind it, which understandably encourages the public to demand more information. Every content creator has experienced this to some degree. Do you make a video on some obscure game you enjoyed, or the upcoming blockbuster that everyone keeps telling you about? And just like that, the hype machine begins. See, when a game is flooded with hype, when the masses are clamoring for it, and when your peers won't stop talking about it, it's hard not to idealize it a bit, even if you don't realize you're doing it. This is the next big thing, right? No one wants to hear a naysayer. All it takes are a few critics who feel this way for this sentiment to spread like a virus, for it to become normalized, for people in both the press and the public to idolize a game that hasn't even released yet. It may seem crazy, but all we're talking about is basic human instinct. Concepts like peer pressure, confirmation bias, and flat-out gaslighting are being weaponized against us by the games industry. If Cyberpunk taught us anything, it's how potent these forces can be. If everyone you know is talking about it, you're gonna seek out more news, which in turn encourages the press to give the people what they want, which in turn makes people talk about the game even more. It's a vicious circle, and a marketer's wet dream. Any skepticism or criticism gets buried in a sea of clickbait, all competing for your attention and eager to confirm your quickly developing bias. Then the review process begins, behind the veil of NDAs and the promise of a day one patch. You get the game in your hands, and for the first time, you only have your own opinion to go by. And you're a bit confused. This game has been hyped up for almost a decade. All the previews said it was great. You're certain your peers must be enjoying it more than you, but you have no way of confirming that thanks to all the secrecy. Clearly you're in the wrong for criticizing it, right? Surely the game's problems aren't as bad to you as they are to others. You have a duty to be unbiased here after all, and maybe your own preconceived notions are clouding your judgment and making the game seem worse than it is. Besides, you only have a few days to get this review out by release day. You don't have time to actually explore this world, do you? You're probably just rushing through the game and aren't seeing how good it really is. Yeah, let's slap an 8 out of 10 on this. I'm sure the day one patch will fix the issues anyway. And just like that, the system fails. Critic or consumer, we keep falling for the same industry tricks, contributing to an ever-escalating hype train that blinds us from reality until it's too late. Now, of course, none of this excuses the critics and content creators. We failed you. Hard. If Cyberpunk teaches us nothing else, we need to understand just how codependent, predatory, and outright broken the relationship is between the industry and the media. I don't know how else to put this. When you see advertisements for video games on a video game review site, you know there's a problem. When you see me, a notorious cynic about open world RPGs, singing the praises of a gameplay trailer, you know there's a problem. There is a dark synergy between the press, the public, and the publishers, and we all need to snap out of it before we make the same mistakes all over again. Games like Cyberpunk aren't just bad for consumers, critics, and developers. They're bad for games as a whole. Here's the bottom line. As long as publishers can so easily manipulate us, they have no reason to innovate. I mean, why advance the medium when they can sell us the same mediocre products over and over again? If you think I'm being hyperbolic, just look at the state of open world RPGs. These games have limitless potential. They let you live a life in a virtual world, and yet we haven't seen any real innovation from the genre in over a decade. Sure, the bells and whistles change, but when it comes to creating a dense, immersive, and reactive open world, we've barely advanced beyond the days of Oblivion.
You want to move up in the world, do you?
No, I'm just fine.
Have you been struck dumb? You want to move up in the world, do you?
I ran into a couple of mud crabs not long ago. Annoying creatures.
Well, at least they're slow and not too bright. Their pincers are sharp, though.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Greetings, son of Skyrim.
Let's be honest, these games, even the good ones, are shells of what they could be, and the reason for this is simple. They know they'll get away with it. They know how the hype machine works. They know how to game the review system. Most importantly, they know that people want games like this, and just how much their fans are willing to tolerate. Your eventual disappointment has already been factored in. Like Bethesda before them, the people running CDPR chose stagnation over innovation. They prioritized marketing and profit over the advancement of a genre that's in dire need of new ideas. Complacency and apathy are killing video games, butchering them into these overproduced, underdeveloped trash fires of mediocrity, abuse, and broken promises. And that is why Cyberpunk is everything wrong with video games. Not because it's the worst game ever made, not because no one can enjoy it, but because it encapsulates everything that's wrong with the industry that created it. Now, this video is basically over, but there's one more thing I want to talk about. We so often resign ourselves to failure in this industry. We assume we can't have nice things because that's what the publishers tell us. But after everything we talked about in this video, do you really believe them? This industry gaslights us into accepting mediocrity. We can have a world as deep as it is wide. We can have a reactive story with branching paths and compelling roleplay. We can have an action RPG with good combat. None of this is impossible. We have the technology. Hell, some of this stuff we figured out decades ago. The only thing stopping better games from being made is the industry itself. Hell, it doesn't even have to be a big budget game. I don't know about you guys, but I'd play a game that looks like this if it had a compelling world and engaging choices. Honestly, for all this talk of action RPGs, I'd say we've never truly seen one. A game that blends the high-octane combat of classic action games with the depth and scale of a classic RPG. I'm talking Doom meets Baldur's Gate, set in a Bethesda-style open world. Look, I'm just dreaming now, but this is the kind of thing that could happen if the industry was forced to start caring again. All it takes is a single studio prioritizing the right things, working within their means, focusing on roleplay, immersion, and satisfying combat to deliver the next generation of open-world action RPGs. The dream of Night City is still attainable. But hey, that's just my opinion.